Michael Jordan was arguably the greatest basketball player ever, and he attained a legendary status that transcended the sport. This was largely due to his dominance of the 80s and 90s, and the resultant 6 rings with the Bulls. Looking back, it would seem impossible for the Bulls to fall from grace. But as we all know, that's exactly what happened. Because after Jordan left in 1998, they quickly fell into difficult times. Phil Jackson, Scottie Pippen, Dennis Rodman, and company, who were the cornerstones of the team, moved on, making them a certified punching bag for the other teams in the East. For 7 years straight, the Bulls were horrible. They didn't make the playoffs, and at one point, they posted the worst record in the entire league. Yet, amidst all the struggles, there was hope with the drafting of Luol Deng and Ben Gordon in 2004. This group was good enough to make the playoffs, but something was missing: the talisman. All that changed in 2008, and that's where our story begins. With the first pick in the 2008 NBA Draft, the Chicago Bulls select Derrick Rose from the University of Memphis. This moment felt scripted. A talented boy who was born in Chicago, raised as a Bulls fan, and is now the hometown hero, the franchise savior? You can't write a better script than this. The fact that the Bulls had a 1.7 chance of drafting him didn't help matters either. Not to mention, it seemed like the stars had aligned, and a ring was in the cards. See, rookie Rose was explosive, athletic, powerful, and had many dribbling tricks up his sleeve. My jaw dropped watching this new point guard do his thing. And not just me. The Bulls had never seen a player like this since MJ. And unsurprisingly, he won Rookie of the Year and got us excited for the future. We thought the talisman had arrived and another Bulls dynasty was in the making. Fast forward to the 2010-2011 season. The boy has grown into a man, outperforming everyone and becoming the regular season MVP at just 22 years of age. MVP Rose was unstoppable. Watching him back then sent shivers down my spine. And now reliving that period overwhelms me with nostalgia. The feeling is indescribable. It's crazy how good this kid was. He took this form into the playoffs, and together with his all-star supporting cast, coasted to the Eastern Conference Finals, where they fell to the Heat. The Heat was a super team featuring the big three of LeBron James, Dwayne Wade, and Chris Bosh. The Bulls lost to them, but they gained much-needed experience, and never had an NBA championship felt closer since the days of the great MJ. Much like the previous season, the 2011-2012 Bulls was a joy to watch for Bulls fans and non-Bull fans alike. They had gotten better and had all the markings of a legit title contender. They had a stacked roster, a solid defense which was the best in the league, and an offense led by Rose that only few in the NBA could measure up to. They breezed through teams, ultimately ending up with a 75% win percentage, the best in the East. In the playoffs, they faced the 8th-seeded Philadelphia 76ers. Now, this game was meant to be a walk in the park, and indeed it was.
Boozer into Rose. Derrick Rose begins a three-point.
But the infamous injury happened that would change the entire league forever. April 28, 2012, in front of over 21,000 fans at the United Center in Chicago. This was a day the Bulls have remembered with great resentment, regret, and negativity. It was also the day Rose and the Bulls began their quest to make history. As expected of a #1 seed, the Bulls began the game strong, keeping the 76ers at arm's length, with Rose aggressively attacking the basket, using his handles, knocking down Jays, and making plays for his teammates. On the defensive end, Carlos Boozer, Luol Deng, and Joakim Noah restricted the Sixers to fewer points. The Bulls were in the driver's seat for much of the game, but as the clock wound down, Rose's moment with destiny drew even closer. Meanwhile, time was ticking and the Sixers couldn't stop Rose's onslaught. At one point, he upped the Bulls to a 20-point lead. There was no need to keep him on the floor, but Bulls coach Tom Thibodeau thought otherwise. Then, with less than 1 minute and a half left on the clock, tragedy struck.
We're looking to sweep you guys. You wanted us. You were crying out that you bypassed the harder team in Miami Heat.
Rose came down bad on his left foot. See him holding onto his knee.
The Bulls would go on to win that game, but with their talisman gone, they began to struggle and lost 3 games in a row, ultimately losing the series 4-2. The deed was done. Rose and the Bulls never recovered from this one defining moment. Even though Rose returned a season later, it was clear he was no longer the same player. Not only did his injuries pile up, he lost some explosiveness. His efficiency was down, and even his shooting form was affected. Someone who could guarantee the Bulls 21 points and 6.8 assists per game before the devastating injury saw those numbers drop drastically. It was a sad situation for him, and his dream of one day leading the Bulls to a championship gradually faded away because of one action or inaction. A career was shattered, and the future of a franchise has never looked more bleak. It was a perfect reminder of how fragile a player's career really is, and on top of that, how one injury can set off a chain reaction, leading to the successes of other franchises. See, with the only solid competition for the Heat in the East gone due to Rose's injury, everything else was easy for him. Between 2010 and 2014, the Heat were unstoppable. I still marvel at how good they were back then, with the young fit and prime LeBron spearheading that team. It wasn't surprising that they made 4 consecutive appearances in the NBA Finals, winning 2 of them back-to-back. In 2012, they schooled the young and talented Oklahoma City Thunder in 5 games. And in 2013, they were just too good for the San Antonio Spurs over 7 games. LeBron later returned to Cleveland in 2014 and made another 4 back-to-back finals and won the Cavs their first ever NBA championship in 2016. This got me thinking, if Rose had stayed fit, would this have happened? Would LeBron and the Bulls have had such easy rides to the finals? There are more questions than answers, but there's every reason to believe that Rose and the Bulls could have stood in the way of LeBron during his dominant years. And so anyway, Rose's injury may have helped LeBron, the Heat, and the Cavs, but it also had an impact on the NBA at large. And one way it impacted the NBA was by messing up the destination of draft picks. Rose's injury took the steam out of the Bulls, and they could no longer compete at a high level, meaning they were seated higher in the draft, and their chances of landing a top pick increased. This shifted the draft pecking order, so that picks from 2013 and beyond ended up on different teams than they would have if the Bulls remained strong. CJ McCollum, Victor Oladipo, Pascal Siakam, and others ended up on different teams because of the Bulls' new position in the league, altering the dynamics of the NBA and, of course, the careers of these players. For instance, since Siakam was key to the Raptors' success in 2019, if he had never been drafted by them in 2016, they probably wouldn't have been good enough to make the NBA Finals in 2019. This means we would have been robbed of one of the greatest moments in sports history.
It's off to Leonard, defended by Simmons. Is this the dagger?
Kawhi's buzzer beater would have never happened, and the Raptors would still be without an NBA title. In 2016, if the Bulls had still been strong in the East, they wouldn't have gotten the 14th pick in the draft, and they wouldn't have traded Rose. He could have been offered a max contract, and perhaps Rose might still be playing for them to this day. But the story doesn't end there. Imagine what the situation would be if Rose had never gotten injured. In an alternate reality where Rose chose a safer play, or Thibodeau made the right decision to rest him, then the Bulls would have likely dispatched the 8th-seeded 76ers. That would have set up a conference semifinal showdown against the Celtics. Going by their regular season record, the Bulls would have won this one too. That means they would come face to face with their arch nemesis, the Heat, in the conference finals. Now keep in mind that the Bulls would be hungry for revenge, and they'd be determined to correct their mistakes against the Heat from the previous year. Based on their regular season games, the Bulls and the Heat were tied 2-2. This clash would have been a must-watch, and the winner would have likely been decided over 7 games. Let's say the Bulls defeat the Heat, then they would have faced the OKC Thunder. Could they handle the young and strong OKC? Well, if they could beat the Heat, then it's highly likely that they'd overpower the OKC Thunder as well. This would mean that LeBron would have fewer rings, and this would greatly alter his legacy in the league. In other words, Derrick Rose could become the new face of the NBA instead of LeBron. In this era, Steph Curry and Kyrie Irving rose to prominence in the absence of a fit Rose, such that when these players are mentioned, Rose's name is often excluded from the conversation. This would have never had been the case had Rose's knees never failed him. Besides, before there was the triple-double machine Westbrook or the explosive Ja Morant, there was Derrick Rose. While these players have a higher chance of making the Hall of Fame, Rose's chances are pretty slim. Had he stayed healthy, his legacy would have been cemented, and there would have been no debate about his Hall of Fame candidacy. Moreover, if Derrick Rose had never been injured, Jimmy Butler probably wouldn't be the player he is today. Wait, let me explain. Rose's injury forced Jimmy to step up and carry part of the offensive load, allowing him to develop different aspects of his game. On the flip side, it is possible that if Rose stayed injury-free, then Jimmy Butler would have developed into a star player regardless. And together with Rose, they would have created a Bulls dynasty. Kevin Durant might have chosen the Bulls instead of the Warriors, because the Bulls would have been the more dominant team in the league. Just imagine a team with Kevin Durant, Jimmy Butler, and Joakim Noah, led by the electrifying Derrick Rose. Instead of the Heat dynasty, we could have witnessed another Bulls dynasty. And not just that, the Warriors' legacy could have been overshadowed by the Bulls' dominance. And while we can fantasize, it was not to be. Injuries deprived us of these endless possibilities. One freak accident threw a promising career off, ended the dreams and hopes of a franchise, and rewrote the script of the entire league. Fast forward to 2024, LeBron has attained GOAT status like MJ did, but Rose, the guy everyone touted as a true heir to MJ's throne, has retired from basketball with little to nothing to show for it. That's the power of injuries. It's crazy how one moment in time can have such an enormous impact on the events that would shape the future. As I reflect deeply on Rose's injury, it reminds me of life in general. One mistake can be the difference between success and failure, progress and stagnation. If you enjoyed watching this video, give it a like and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. We'll see you in the next one.